Okay, in this video, we are going to talk about passing lists to functions. So we've seen how to work with lists, and you should have done some practice. So now we can talk about lists and functions, right? We talked about lists and main. When you send lists to functions, lists are a little special. When you send a list to a function, they are passed by reference. What does that mean? So you've seen how to pass arguments and parameters to functions. When you send arguments to functions, they you have to return them, right? When you change things in the function, unless you return them, nothing happens. In the case of a list, notice when you send it to a function and it gets filled in the function, notice how it's getting filled in the original cup as well. While when you pass it by value, that doesn't happen. Okay, so we're going to see how to do that in code, and then you can start practicing. So here is code that I have where I have a couple of lists and I create them in main. Okay, by now you all know how to create lists. So names is an empty list, scores is an empty list. I have some functions here. Read list is a function that's going to read a list of names and their scores from the user. So I send them as parameters to the function, and in the function I have a local variable called username just to read their name before I add it to the list. This is the name of the list, names and scores, and they are empty, right? They're coming in as empty lists. Username is one name, user score is one score. User score is 0, username is a string. I read username from the user the first time. I check if it is not equal to blank, which means if they haven't hit the enter key, then I want to go into the loop. I take that name and I append it to my list. This is my list. Remember, that's my list. I append username to the list. Then I read a score from the user into user score. Then I append that to the list. Then I ask them to read the name again or enter the name again. Once I enter the next name, we go back to the loop. If they haven't hit enter, we append, read the score, append the score, and we read the next name. And we keep doing that until the user just hits enter. When they hit enter, that means they are done appending names. Then we are going to call the print list function. The print list function simply takes the two parameters and it prints them. So if you look at the print list function, it takes names and scores. We go through a for loop because now it's a list of names, right? We go through a for loop and we say len of names because I don't know how many names the user entered. We just went through a while loop and kept reading until they hit enter. So len of names will give me the number of elements in the list. Index starts at 0 and we simply print it separated by a semicolon. So if you run it, here's a name, here's a score, here is another name, here's another score, here's another name, more scores, and then you hit enter, it quits. And notice that's what I have, names and scores, right? So I didn't have to return anything. Names and scores came into the function, got filled, and it automatically went back. And then I turned around and sent them to my function, which printed them. So it was getting filled in the function, but it actually got filled in main. I really didn't have to return both the lists. So that's what we're talking about when we see this cup filling. As it fills in the function, it gets filled in main. Something for you to think about.